a lot of growth. You know, I was on this journey of growth, and it was extremely addictive to go from like a young woman who really, you know, living in a world of you know, drink to your drop and not really thinking of your future, not thinking of anything, the meaning of life or anything like that at all, to opening my mind and being on this journey of growth and discovery, and every day being different, and all the different people I was meeting. I sort of came up with this little catchphrase that I lived 1,000 lifetimes every day.
Hello, beautiful people. On today's podcast, we have the adventurous Heather Ellis. Heather is a communications specialist with a degree in journalism and is the author of 2 books, Ubuntu, which details her motorcycle journey from South to North Africa, and Timeless on the Silk Road, which details her motorcycle journey along the fabled Silk Roads. What I personally love about this conversation is Heather's courage shown throughout her motorcycling journeys. She travels on her motorcycle throughout some of the most fascinating and symbolic places on Earth. And it is in this conversation that we go deeper on her thoughts, reflections, and experiences of traveling solo through Africa, a continent that has many a contrasting opinion, but one that is not truly ever known unless stepped onto. The culture, the history, the characters, and the inevitable self-development and growth that comes from such places. Heather also shares very openly about finding out at 30 years old that she had contracted HIV, and how this diagnosis silenced her. She shares how it fueled fear of shame, disapproval, rejection, and isolation. All things that are not Ubuntu. Ubuntu being, I am because we are, the essence of being human. Please enjoy this conversation with the lovely Heather Ellis. Welcome to the To Be Human podcast, Heather.
Oh, thank you very much for having me.
So Heather, I have been absolutely delighted and privileged to read both of your books. And as I've shared just sort of before pressing record on the podcast, I just love your writing. It's just so beautiful. So I would love to start with sharing a passage from your first book, Ubuntu. The young men gave their help because I needed it. This was the African way I had come to expect. While at first I was often seen as business, an opportunity to make money, attitudes quickly changed when people realized how far I had traveled and how far I still had to go. This was often followed with the words, long journey, much courage, and sighs of reverence for what my journey meant, both in hardship and in terms of a search of some greater unspoken meaning. Their ways and words always empowered me, and the deeper I traveled into Africa, the deeper was my admiration for their profound sense of what it means to be human.
Yes. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've just gone like goosebumps because I remember that very moment, and yeah, and that really sums up my journey through Africa and the African people and everyone I met, and how, you know, kind they were to me, and open to welcoming me into so many times into their villages, into their homes, and sharing a meal with me, and that is just, you know, so much about what it means to be human, to share food and share companionship together, particularly a stranger, particularly someone traveling alone. Yeah.
Well, I would love to know, Heather, you know, how did you come to be on this long journey with much courage?
At the time, I was working as a radiation safety technician at Ranger Uranium Mine on the fringe of Kakadu National Park. I'd gone there from year 12 because my mother and father were working there. And so I was 18 years old and basically had been working there for most of my 20s. I left for a 2-year backpacking trip to Europe and came back to the mine and got my old job back. And after a few weeks, it felt like I had never left. And there's this kind of this like life passing me by. I'd had a taste of adventure. I'd had a taste of the world, traveling Europe and through Israel, and I was in Iceland working in a fish factory. So I had that. I'd been bitten by the travel bug. But here I was working back at the mine. I'd bought a house because that's what everybody was doing. It's like, not just one house. It was like buy houses, get an investment portfolio. And I just didn't want to, like sort of burden myself with all this debt. And here I am, coming up to being like 27 years old. And I'd really worked in the same place all my life, a small town of 3,000 people, like 300 people working at the mine. And I had this urge to explore the world, but I had no idea how I would go about it and what I would do. I was riding motorcycles at the time, like trail bikes with a group of friends. We would explore Kakadu together. And then we were just sitting around one day having a few beers, and I just blurted out to my friends, wouldn't it be great to ride a motorcycle through Africa? And it was like I don't know, sort of a bolt of lightning or something came out and just hit me, and I knew this was what I was going to do. I think it was a culmination of my entire life leading up to that moment, because as a teenager, I had read all of Wilbur Smith. I just loved Africa. I had this desire, like love of Africa and African stories and the culture, but I didn't ever think about going there. I didn't think, why not travel Africa? It didn't really occur to me. It just seemed like an untouchable land. And I experienced it through reading. But then when I came out and said, yes, wouldn't it be great to ride a motorcycle through Africa? It just felt right. It just felt like this was my calling, this was what I was meant to do. And I've kind of never felt anything like that in my life. And I remember, because you can imagine this small town and the word gets out, Heather's going to ride a motorcycle across Africa on her own, and they're all like, oh, you're going to get, killed, you're going to get chopped up by a machete, you're crazy. Like, word traveled really fast. But that did not deter me. And I remember saying to a friend, the only reason I will not ride a motorcycle across Africa will be if I die. If something terrible happened to me and I couldn't do it. Like, I was going to do this no matter what. And I was completely possessed by this idea for the 12 months of planning. I had got the idea and how I was going to go about it, what motorcycle I was going to ride, what I was going to carry. This was all before the internet. So it's not like I could, Google how to ride a motorcycle across Africa. I read Ted Simon's book, Jupiter's Travels, which is like the classic motorcycle travel memoir at the time. And even today, the journey Ted Simon did in the early 1970s. I bought a Michelin map. It wasn't like we had Google and I could work out all the distances and so forth. I just bought this Michelin map of Africa and plotted out my journey. And then I had to also save the money to go because, this wasn't going to be a holiday. I was going to give up my job, a really well-paying job, and off I would go. And there was no time limit. It's not like, oh, yes, this would take me 12 months and I'd be home. I would come home when I would come home. And my journey lasted 4 years. So it was 14 months in Africa, a year riding, being a motorcycle courier in London, delivering packages all around London, and then a year riding home through Europe and Central Asia and travelling down through China to Vietnam.
It's just absolutely incredible. And I'm so drawn to your story, and particularly reading the initial part of your journey in your first book, Ubuntu. It was funny. I personally resonated with so much of it when I was sort of in my teens, I, in a very similar way, was very drawn to Africa. And personally, for me, I was drawn to the books of sort of humanitarians that had worked in Africa. And that's how I kind of lived in that space. And my first trip overseas was a solo trip to Kenya, doing some volunteer work over there. And, you know, subsequently, I kind of lived over there, and I went back 3 more times. And I loved kind of the similarity between our stories, in the sense of, you know, you tell your parents that you're doing something like this. And I think, you know, obviously motorcycling from one end to the other is a lot more extreme than just purely visiting for volunteer work. But I think it was a fascinating aspect. So I remember reading in your book, you know, your dad's response was kind of, you know, a bit of humor, a bit of Aussie humor towards it. And your mum was a bit more kind of like, you know, you might end up in a cooking pot. And it made me laugh, because I remember my parents were so similar. I think my dad sort of joked that, you know, I might end up sort of, he'd have to pay a ransom or something. And obviously it was kind of met with humor, because I think similar with your parents, they knew, you know, that it was going to happen, and that they had to accept and give that sort of freedom to their child. But there is that element of nervousness. And I do wonder with you, Heather, because you were so confident in this, do you now look back at all and do you think, oh, wow, like I was going into that, though I was confident, I was also naive?
Oh, definitely. I was like, when I left, I was 28, and I'm, you know, a country girl. I was sort of brought up in outback Australia and then far north Queensland. So I didn't have any street smartness about me at all. I had, you know, and even today, and even like I will continue to have this my entire life, a very trusting attitude to my fellow human beings. Anyone I come across, I you know, it's like they're my friend. You know, I want to talk to them and learn about them and have that rapport. So I don't view people as, oh, what are they going to do to me? Are they a threat? Are they going to hurt me? I didn't have that then, and I don't have that now. And I think that was why people really warmed to me in Africa, and also anywhere else I went, like through Central Asia. Because I think if you've got a sense of you know, of openness about you, you actually, it's like an energy that will come out of you, and people sense it, and they will be, you know, moved to help you, or moved to talk to you and be around you, and that's the attitude I had. And yes, I mean, you know, I was extremely naive, but as I travelled, you know, I soon learned, because when you're travelling alone, you really connect to your intuition. Mm-hmm. So you know, you might come across people or a place, and you think, oh, gee, this doesn't quite feel right. So you actually listen to that, because you don't have anyone else to talk to and say, oh, you know, like, is this the right thing to do? So you become really in tune with your intuition. And through that, I kind of became quite like, had this street smartness about me, so that I, you know, I would be safe. Like, and a lot of it is common sense. Like, I never went out at night in a town. I wouldn't go to a bar or something to drink on my own. I mean, there were a couple of times that you'll read in Ubuntu where I was drinking beers in a bar on my own, but it was like the hotel where I was staying. So that's where you go to have your meal. You would have read about that time in Zaire, which is the now Democratic Republic of Congo, and all the money was changing over, and the hotels in Zaire are all brothels. I didn't know that. I thought it was a hotel, and that was like after I went to this one hotel, and you know, that I was drinking beers, and you know, the African man said, oh, you know, I want to have sex with you, and I'm like, what? I just realised this was a brothel, and I just sort of extracted myself from the bar and went back to my room and locked the door and stayed there for the rest of the night. So you know, the day is always a safe time. Like, I just made sure as much as possible I wasn't on the road at night. You know, I'd always be somewhere sleeping, find somewhere to sleep around 5 o'clock. And I never went out on my own at night in a town. So, and then if you sort of follow those rules, you'll be safe. Like when I'd go to a village, I would ask the headman if I could camp, or pitch my tent. They would always offer me a hut, and I was like, no, I'll stay in my tent because it's a humid tropical environment, or hot and dry, and they're thatched mud huts have very limited ventilation. And besides, I didn't want to take somebody's home because that hut would be used by somebody. But once I was given permission to stay, then I'm a guest of that tribe or that group of people, that small village, and I was, nobody would hurt me, and it was wonderful because I could observe and watch what people were, how sit around with the women when they're cooking their food, or hang out with the kids when they're doing something, and just learn from them. And I was curious about their life, and they were curious about me. So I would have a small photo album of photos of my family, of my parents, and what they did. My mum and dad were banana farming, which went down really well because, especially in the middle part of Africa, bananas are a big thing over there. They're eaten like not just a fruit, but as a vegetable, like the green banana. The plantains are cooked like a potato. So that was really impressive. And they had a little glimpse of my life in Australia, photos of Australian animals, kangaroos and koalas and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think it's so beautiful and it's so important because, even in my own experience, Heather, there seemed to be sort of this almost a combination of a lack of information and misinformation when it comes to Africa and the experience of Africa. And I certainly think that's changing. But I'd love to know more. Your book is called Ubuntu. So I'd love for you to share more about what Ubuntu means and what your experience in relation to that was like in Africa that obviously was such a positive experience for you.
Yeah. Ubuntu, it's a Bantu word, and it means I am because we are. So it's a community word. It's like it's sort of, when you look right back to, sort of our ancestors, when we were a small, extended family of people surviving on the plains of Africa and trying to be avoided by being eaten by a saber-toothed tiger or, whatever, we would have to work together and be a family and protect each other. So I am because we are means that like I survived because we are together as a group and we're looking after each other. So as, humanity has moved on, and in a village situation, we're all in a community. Like in Africa, people look after each other and, we grow our food together. And if one family doesn't have enough food, the other family will share their food. So we all survive together. And then that word has gone, I think, beyond that. I like to think it from a like a global point of view. Like we are all connected. We're all one together. And it can be applied to in so many ways, like global warming, for example. Like if we all play our part in reducing our footprint, we will make the world a better place. So and when you've got a charity or an NGO trying to do work in a developing country like Africa, particularly say providing money for HIV medications or money for water and sanitation projects, if everyone in the world contributed $1, say $1 even a week, $1 a week, every person in the world, you would end all that kind of poverty. And that's kind of what Ubuntu means to me. It means that we're all connected and we can all work together to, make the world a better place. I know it sounds like big picture type of stuff, but it will, in reality, it will work. And it has worked. Ubuntu has worked for thousands and thousands of years by, helping humanity, Homo sapiens, survive and evolve to what we are today.
I think it's such an important concept, and I loved sort of the contrast in your story, because obviously as you started out, as you're sharing, it's such a big and new adventure, and particularly sort of being in your later 20s, you're still so young, and there seemed to be sort of a theme, an element at the beginning of your journey surrounding this idea of loneliness. And you sort of at the start of your journey were traveling with someone that you guys sort of didn't necessarily get along. And I recently had a guest on the podcast called Miriam Lancewood, and she's a very adventurous woman herself who has done many adventures. And she sort of spoke about this idea of like, I feel like when we go out into these adventures, and I certainly can relate to this as well on my first trip to Africa, it's like we are seeking something and it's so passionate, and it's like, that you're going to be a part of this. But when you start going on this journey, there's something confronting about that sense of isolation that we tend to have within our community as individuals. Can you sort of share, your lessons and your journey about moving from that space of feeling quite isolated and lonely and sort of learning to feel more connected with the people around you and nature itself?
Yeah, when I started the journey, so I got the idea and I planned. And then like about 2 months before I was going to leave, a colleague at work said, "Oh, yeah, that would be really great. I'll go." Now, when I got the idea and I was sitting with all these people and having a few beers, and I said, "Yes, wouldn't it be great to ride a motorcycle across Africa?" So it's probably about 10 or 12 people sitting around together, friends, and they all said, "Yes, that's great. Let's all do it. Let's all do it." So it's like 12 of us that go on this trip. And as the days went on, "Oh, no, I don't think I can do that." And there was one guy who said at the time, "Yeah, I'd love to do that." But he wasn't so sure. And then 2 months before he committed, and I was really relieved, actually. We didn't know each other. We just knew each other from the same sort of network of friends that we'd all sort of go out and hang out together. I'd never really had a conversation with him. And I was relieved because, one, he was male, and I thought, well, I'll be protected. And two, he was a really good motorcycle mechanic. And I used to have so many sleepless nights over, like, what if the bike broke down? It was a brand new motorcycle I bought, so it wasn't really going to break down. All I had to really do was the basic maintenance, and it would do the job that it was designed to do. And it was a Yamaha TT600. It's an enduro bike. It's a strong, tough enduro bike. And so I was relieved I had now, sort of like a protector and a motorcycle mechanic. So it was just, took a lot of weight off my mind. But as soon as we started traveling, we just didn't get on. And I had completely forgotten about the whole thing about how it's so important when you travel with someone that you click, that you get on. And we just didn't click. There's nothing wrong with that. There's some people that you just click with and they become your friends, often your lifelong friends. But there's other people that you just don't click with, and no matter how much you try, it's just not going to work. And that's how we were together. And those first few months until we got to Nairobi in Kenya were really the loneliest time of my entire life. Looking back, like, I have never been so lonely as those few months, and I have never felt so isolated during that time, and really lacked confidence because we didn't get on. I felt there was something wrong with me. It was like, what's wrong with me? Why doesn't this person talk to me? Why can't we share experiences together and share our ideas and thoughts and about what's going on? Why do we never talk? So therefore, I reflected back that I was the problem. So when we got to Nairobi, because I'd gone through that, and it got to a point where I just couldn't be with this travel with this person anymore. And he felt the same way. But his issue was that Africa was not for him. His idea of traveling Africa was like backpackers hostels, cold beer and rump steak. My idea was the roughest back road you could find, African villages and goat meat stew and ugali, which is like a maize porridge. So completely two different ideas of what we wanted from the journey. And so he left Africa to head back to Australia, and I then was on my own in Africa. And that is when my journey started. And I was never lonely for a moment ever again on that. Well, when I was in Africa, I never, ever felt lonely. I would, anywhere I'd pull up, people would approach me and talk to me because people want to, it's like I'm an alien from another planet. They want to know who I am, what I'm doing there, where I'm from. And I was just as interested in them. And particularly in the East Africa, most people can speak a certain amount of English. And the younger people really want to practice their English. And then on the western part of Africa, a lot of it is French. So I learned a little bit of French. So between my little bit of French and their little bit of English, we were able to have a conversation. But it was just, I was never for a moment lonely. And I am a person, I like to spend time in my own company. So I had that really great balance. When I'm on the bike, you're not talking to anyone, so I'm just in my head. And then when I get off the bike and, buy some food or, sit down in a little cafe and have a beer, people will join me. And it was, never lonely from when I was traveling alone.
And what was it like as a female solo traveler? Because there's certain stories in your book that I did reflect, and I'm like, I wonder whether as a male that we would get ourselves into the same situation. So I'd love to know, what was your experience going from South sort of to North Africa, being a female solo traveler?
A lot of times I was always speaking to men. It's just the way it's that sort of that kind of society in many developing countries. It's often you'll go into a village and you'll see all the men sitting around under a shady tree, and the women are out working, doing all the work. So they haven't got the time to really talk. The only time I kind of spoke to the women was when I would stay at a village and I could hang around the fire, and I would always try and make sure I had something to bring to the table, a loaf of bread or some sugar and that kind of thing, some whatever I happened to have at the time. Or I'd buy a chicken, or a guinea fowl and ask, them if, they can cook it for me. So, or cook it together kind of thing. And when I was on the barges on the Zaire River from Kisangani to Kinshasa, there I had, because I was on those barges for a month, I had the time to get to know the women, sorry, and speak to them and find those few women that could speak a little bit of English on that trip. Because I was riding a motorcycle, motorcycles have this sense of street cred, they're strong and tough. That aura of strength was kind of the bike was sort of, I think, reflected back on me because I had this motorcycle, therefore I must be this really strong, independent, courageous woman. And, I was very conscious that my body was always covered, you're wearing jeans, a motorcycle jacket, all that kind of thing. So you kind of look a bit like a road warrior, you look a bit tough. So I think that helped a lot. I didn't look, and I wasn't vulnerable in any way. I projected this aura of power and strength. And I think that's a bit part of it. Image really is everything. And that it, even African guys would say that to me. They would get a bit of money, and I would think, oh, well, they'd save that money for food for the next week until they get a bit more money. But no, they would go out and spend all that money on clothes. So, like Nike fake runners and some kind of name brand T-shirt kind of thing. So because they would say to me, the look is everything. And that's kind of that image. And as I travelled into North Africa, which then became Muslim Africa, in one way I was quite fortunate that my motorcycle jacket got stolen in Kinshasa, which just came down to my hips. And the only thing I could buy was a Burberry trench coat. So it was this navy blue Burberry trench, which, I'd get up to my neck and it dropped down to below my knees, like a tent kind of thing. So I was completely covered, and that meant I was really respectful to the people, to the culture. So as a woman traveling alone, I was accepted because I was respectful to the culture, right? And I had I covered my hair with a scarf, and so I didn't have any problems like that. And also what I found with the African men is they don't have to be pushy. They just ask. And if I say, oh, I'd like to have sex with you, and you say no, that's cool. I'll ask somebody else. They didn't, and that was fine. And then they'll just have a conversation I'm a normal, I'm of no gender at all. I'm just another human being that we're having a conversation with. So, I mean, that's what I really liked there. I didn't feel threatened as a woman in any way.
And I love that you shared the story behind changing sort of your motorcycle jacket, one being stolen and buying the trench coat, because I know that sort of the concept of synchronicity and sort of coincidence is very important to you. You've seen it particularly from the start of this journey sort of come into play almost immediately. Can you sort of share some of your experiences behind why this is such an important concept in your life?
Yeah, because from the moment I got the idea, it actually, the whole thing felt spiritual. It felt like this kind of out of body experience. Somebody, like I was saying before, there was no internet, and I didn't know anything about Jupiter's Travels and Ted Simon's book. I didn't know that. Somebody just gave me the book, and I just devoured it. I read it numerous times. Then this German traveller appeared in Jabiru. It's on the fringe of Kakadu National Park, popular place to go. He was travelling around Australia on his motorcycle, but he had just been to Africa. He'd come from Africa to Perth and ended up in Kakadu. And somebody saw him and said, oh, you need to go and talk to Heather, because Heather's planning to ride a motorcycle around Africa like you, because he had his motorcycle and stickers of Africa and so forth on it. So they gave him my address, and then he turned up on my doorstep. And I was like, wow. And he just gave me so much information about a lot of practical stuff about how to stay safe. He was a bit over the top in a way, but it was really good to have that information. And also he told me about, what I should take parts of my motorcycle, what I should learn to do, all the things I'll need to know mechanically. So I had another friend who was another motorcycle mechanic guy, and he showed me how to do all these things. So I prepared like that. He also, I had to be really fit. He said, make sure you're strong. You've got this motorcycle with all the weight on it is like 200 kilos. You need to be able to lift it. So start working out, start getting strong. So that kind of fell into place. And then I was having all these dreams, like flying dreams, like those, that whole kind of like you feel like you're actually flying. I was having those dreams all the time where I'd be flying over water and arriving in Africa and then riding my motorcycle through Africa. It just was so strange. And I'm not before I got this idea, I'm not a spiritual person. I'm not religious. I was just me. I lived very much a surface sort of person. I was probably a little bit hedonistic as well. It was all about, going out and partying and drinking and having fun. That was kind of the whole concept of my life at that time. And so these things that fell into place, this synchronicity, these coincidences and chance encounters kept occurring the further I travelled into Africa. So, when things like that continually happen, you start just accepting it as a way of life, like it becomes a habit. This is what life is like. So you're kind of going deeper and deeper into this world of synchronicity, and you start thinking about universal energy. You got to remember, like, I'm traveling alone, and I might be riding on my motorcycle for 4 to 5, 6 hours a day with no one to talk to. And you don't just ride along completely like blank. Your mind goes off into little tangents and down this pathway, and you think about that, and then everything starts to connect together. So in Mauritania, when you would have read I had that vision, when that happened, it was kind of like the culmination of everything that had come beforehand from a spiritual point of view. So I believed it. I believed there was something going on here. I had this little scene into a window of some other kind of dimension or whatever. But if that had happened when I was still living in Jabiru before this journey, or even at the beginning of the journey, I would have just thought, I've had a bad dream, or had too much to drink the night before, or something along those lines. I wouldn't have thought anything more of it. And it really, it just doesn't, when that kind of thing happens, it sort of doesn't leave you. And because I'd had my mind like slowly opened over more than 12 months, it slowly, widened and the opening had slowly grown bigger, and my view of what is going on around us had expanded to that extent. Mm.
And with that sort of opening and expansion, how do you balance that with, obviously, throughout this journey, you did come into some sort of, fearful situations. How do you balance between sort of being that open, trusting, connected kind of space versus, I'm sure there's like points where other people's voices come into your mind and sort of there comes a little bit of self-doubt and questioning, what am I actually doing here? Did you have like sort of any moments like that throughout your journey?
Yeah, there was a time when I got lost in the desert in northern Kenya, and I went on that bogus adventure looking for sapphires with that Somali guy. And anyway, came out the other end, survived. And that's when I really, I'm riding my motorcycle back to Nairobi, and I'm just thinking, do I really want to do this? Am I, I nearly died. And no one would have known. No one knew where I was. If my parents hadn't heard from me, I was writing letters to my parents on a weekly basis and phoning them occasionally. So maybe after a month they didn't get a letter from me, and they would have phoned the Australian embassy. So my daughter's in Africa. I think she's in Kenya. I don't know where. I got no idea where. How I could never, maybe I was never found. And that really kind of played on me. I thought about the worry I was causing my parents, particularly my mum. I thought that here I am, a young woman, and I could be losing, I could die. I could seriously die out here. But when I investigated all those thoughts, and when it came to, okay, that's it, I'm going back to Nairobi and going back, I'm getting on the next plane, going back to Australia, I couldn't do it. I just thought, it was no way. No, I am not doing that. I am not giving up this journey. So it was like a crunch point. And also because I had survived the desert and survived that 8 days of bogus adventure in northern Kenyan.
Makes for a good story.
Yeah. I just felt like I could survive anything, and it also reinforced that something would, like, somehow I was meant to do this trip. I would be looked after. Like, everything had always worked out for me. So I just thought, trust that there's something in that. Like, I continue the trust that I will be okay. But on a more practical level, I also come out a lot, wiser about the world, wiser about who to trust, and not just go off on a journey. In fact, when I got to Kisangani, because it's a diamond mining area, and I was talking to these young men, and about, I was talking, where do you find the diamonds and so forth. And then straight away when I'm talking to them, I'm thinking, remember the sapphire guy? Like, don't, because they started saying, we can show you to this river where you can find diamonds, and you just have to buy the equipment and we'll take you there, and then we can dig diamonds as well. Like, we need all the shovels and things like that. And I'm thinking, yeah, for sure. Let's go off into the jungle with 4 African guys I had never met before and go and find diamonds. Like, I had, already had the sapphire experience in northern Kenya. So no, thank you. I'm not doing that. So yeah, there was that was the only moment that I thought about turning back, but it was, no way, I would not turn back. I was really I was having a lot of fun, except for the northern Kenya experience, but and a lot of growth. I was on this journey of growth, and it was extremely addictive, to go from, like, a young woman who really, living in a world of, drink to your drop and not really thinking of the future, not thinking of anything, the meaning of life or anything like that at all, to opening my mind and being on this journey of growth and discovery, and every day being different, and all the different people I was meeting. I sort of came up with this little catchphrase that I lived 1,000 lifetimes every day, because that's how I felt. Every day was just so different and exciting and filled with adventure and learning and different experiences. And to me, that's what, that was the meaning of life at that time.
I love all that you shared in that, Heather. It's just so beautiful, and I certainly resonate with that. I was living in Tunisia for 4 months a few years ago in North Africa, and I had an incident that loved ones and friends sort of told me to come home immediately. It was in the first week of getting there, and now I sort of look back and I'm like, what kept me there? And I think it's very similar to you, Heather. It's just like, there's a knowing that it's right to stay. There's like a deep knowing. I never questioned it. I always knew. And I think through that, it's like, the sliding doors moment. It's like, okay, if we did go home back to Australia, it's like, would you return to drinking till you drop? And, I would have returned to a corporate job that I was really unhappy with. And I think there's so much beauty in the risk to reward in situations like this. And it's so powerful to be able to make that confident decision within yourself that it's like, okay, I truly don't know what will happen, and there is risk to this, but it's worth me exploring. It's worth me going on that adventure and living my life and really feeling alive, versus sort of going back into the comfort zone that I feel like, many people that I've met, and you read this in so many books, they get to the end of their lives and they wish that they had done something or stayed in that place, or, didn't sort of go back into their comfort zone where you don't grow as much, you don't learn as much, you don't understand that connectedness between people all around the world that I think is just so important to experience and to understand.
Yeah. Like, we're not, you've learned from my books that I'm living with HIV. So when I was diagnosed in London, because I was working as a motorcycle courier, I wanted to study Russian at the Moscow University over the winter, so I could learn enough Russian then to travel through Russia and Central Asia, because I valued the ability to communicate on a much deeper level than just, hello, how are you, and that kind of thing. But to learn Russian for 3 months in Moscow, I needed a 3-month visa, and that required a HIV test. So I went, had the HIV test, didn't think anything of it. I had one unprotected sex moment in Africa, put it behind me in complete denial, and then I was diagnosed. Now, this was 1995, before the effective treatments that we have today, which to me are as good as a cure. People living with HIV on treatments live a long, happy, healthy life, just like the rest of everybody else. But when I was diagnosed, it really made me aware of my own mortality. Prior to that, like all, I was 30 at the time. So, all 30-year-olds or anyone around that age group, you just think you can live forever. You don't think anything further. But really, like, most people probably live to about 80, 85. That's probably the average age. When you're 30, you're kind of nearly about halfway there. And like when you say 70 to 80, well, you can't really be, doing these crazy adventures around the world, or not, you can, but probably not on a big motorcycle. Just physically, the weight of the thing and everything. Although some people might disagree with me and say, well, 70-year-olds are very fit and healthy and can do anything. And I'm hoping to be one of them when I get to 70. But, so you really have to weigh it up and think, like life, what I'm trying to say here is life is short. And there's a big world out there, and it's exciting and it's beautiful, and there's so many fantastic people, and you want to connect. You need to I think that's why, we have this beautiful planet. Like, why just, lock yourself into one part of it, one small part of it, work the same 9-to-5 job your entire life. What is the point of that? I hear many people are really worried about, how much superannuation they're going to have. Will they have enough money for retirement? But, really, when you get to that point of retirement, you probably aren't going to really need a great deal anyway. Like, you really need the money now. This is when you need to get out and travel and have the adventures, and particularly when you're young, before you have a family. I've got 3 teenage boys. So I had my first child when I was 40. I think I'm pretty lucky about that. So, people might think, oh, but, this woman's living with HIV. Yeah, you can have children, they don't have HIV, no problem. Women have natural birth. When you're taking treatments, you're not infectious. The virus is so controlled and hidden that it's virtually not even there. So prior to that, in my late 20s and 30s, I took off for 4 years and had an adventure. It was really 4 years out of my life. You still have plenty of time after you do the traveling to, have the mortgage, or get married, get the mortgage, have children, whatever order you want to do it in. You still got time to do all that without any problem. That means pretty good maybe before you travel to get a bit of money together. I was lucky because I worked in the mining industry, well paid. I virtually paid off a house before I went traveling. I understand it's not, the typical way to do things, but, you can do your traveling early and experience the world. And then, do the mortgage and the career. When I finished traveling, I went to university and studied journalism and worked for News Limited. I work now in communications. So you can do it all, but don't leave it too late. And then, like, I'm getting to the age now where my children are, teenagers. Soon they'll be leaving school and doing their own thing. And then, I want to go off traveling again. So that's my next sort of dream to do. And I have, because of what I've done in the past with traveling, I've got no fears of I know how exciting it is. I know what it's like. I know how many people are out there like me traveling, but also, the people who live in the country and that I will meet. It's thrilling, and I just find it hard to understand why people have this fear about the unknown. I think media has a lot to say for that, because we see on the news it's like rioting and wars and all this horrible stuff going on, but that's really a very, very small part of what's happening in the world. Most of the world, and even in a war time, I've been through countries going through civil war. I didn't see any civil war. It was just in a small area. I just made sure I didn't go to that area. I went to other places, and there people are, getting on with life. Mm.
And you shared about your experience with HIV, and I really want to highlight this topic because I think I just truly honor you for coming out and sharing your story and supporting women now who also have HIV. And I'd love for you to share more about that experience, because as you shared, like, you were 30 years old. It's just so young. And sort of my understanding through reading your book is, the story that kind of led to you having HIV was a story in itself, because as a reader, I found it really fascinating. You spoke about even on your journey in Africa, you didn't get your period. Like, there was something happening in your body that was more of a survival-based experience, it seemed, where it was sort of adjusting and you sort of lost your sex drive that you share. And it was sort of it built up to this night and almost this sort of sliding doors experience. I'd love for you to know sort of your thoughts on reflecting back to that night that you sort of pinned towards potentially leading to you to have HIV, and also just being a 30-year-old sort of being told, that you do have HIV. Particularly, I'd like to highlight sort of in a day and age where, it's not how it is now. It was a much more sort of, we didn't have the medication and things like that that we do now.
Yeah, well, when I went to Africa, I didn't carry condoms with me, because I thought, well, I know that Africa is like an epicenter of HIV. So I'm not going to have sex. So why do I need condoms? So I didn't take them. And I didn't even think about, like you said, I had no sex drive. I didn't even think about sex. For some reason, my periods completely stopped. But one thing I wasn't aware of, and I never even thought of, is, I was a young woman, with a body. And after 12 months of not even thinking about sex, not even having any desire for sex, and then a series of events led to this one event happening. This guy I'd met in a village a few days before and got on with, as another person. He spoke really good English. He was actually an English teacher from the university in Bamako, and we kind of got on and chatted, and then I met him again. Like, remember in that scene where the hustler guy wanted money from me because he'd shown me around all these different motorcycle tyre shops and I couldn't find the right one. And anyway, this guy was threatened to throw petrol all over me while I was sleeping, because I was sleeping outside in this sort of area near the security guys, and they were kind of looking after me because I couldn't put my bike. If I slept in the university dorms, I couldn't take my motorcycle with me, and I would just have to leave it on its own. I didn't want to do that. So I went back to this suburban house in Bamako where this American girl and her Malian boyfriend. She was a Peace Corps worker. So everyone sort of spoke English quite well, and we were having a party, and I felt relaxed. And it was the first time I could really relax for a long time. In fact, probably for nearly 12 months, where I had a few beers and, one thing led to the other. And I never even thought, oh, where am I going to sleep? That didn't even occur to me. And then this other guy, we got on. We connected, and we're talking all night. And then, one thing led to the other. And, and that's actually really, I love that scene in that book, in the book, when I write about like all the moments leading up to that, without giving too much away. But it was, sometimes I look back and I think, like maybe, that it was meant to happen that way. Like it was like part of the whole plan. But then again, like I never I tried to contact this guy, like wrote a letter. I didn't even have his address, but I knew he went to this particular hotel in this village, so I sent a letter there. The letter may never arrived. I never received a response, just to tell him about my diagnosis, because that's what you do, if that happens. And but it may not have been him. I was having unprotected sex with people in Australia before I got to Africa. And then when I got to Europe, I met a German guy who had travelled through Africa on a motorcycle, and we had unprotected sex because that's kind of what we did back then in the 90s. And I sort of speak to young women now who might meet people on, online, and they say, oh, no, I didn't use a condom. And I'm like, what? You're crazy. You're completely crazy. But it's just what happens. And this is why people should have regular sexual health checkups, particularly with HIV, because it can be bubbling away in the background for up to 10 years. And then, you might be getting sick occasionally and just, I don't know what that is. But all the time it's doing damage to your body. So you need to find out as soon as possible so you can go on treatment, and then you're not having any damage done to your body and for your future health. So it's so important. And what they call late stage diagnosis it's just slowly increasing among the heterosexual community, and that's men and women who may have had unprotected sex at some point in the past, had forgotten about it, and it comes back later on where they will end up in hospital. And often also the woman might be a professional person, and the doctor doesn't even think of HIV because they're really, sort of biased as well against people who get HIV. They'll think, oh, this woman is not a sex worker, or this man is not a gay man, they're not a drug user, so therefore they won't get HIV. But HIV doesn't discriminate. It could, it could be anyone. And this is what is happening. Like women and men are being late stage diagnosed with HIV, and they might have, some kind of cancer or some kind of really, really aggressive form of pneumonia that can be fatal if left untreated. And you don't want to get to that stage. So when people have a sexual health checkup for things like chlamydia and gonorrhea and so forth, just ask for HIV as well.
And so after obviously you got diagnosed with HIV, you motorbiked from London to Hanoi, which is just an amazing adventure in itself. And I know that sort of you returned home quite unwell, and that your mother actually at the time asked you whether you had HIV. And at the time you said no, because there was so much stigma around having HIV or AIDS. And even in your book, you described that it took you actually 20 years to share this with sort of friends and extended family. I'd love for you to share more about your journey sort of along the lines of stigma and sort of where you are with it now.
Well, yeah, now I'm, completely like open. I'm like I've written the 2 books. To me, it's like the more we talk about it, people living with HIV, the more voices that are out there, the more normality there will be. The more acceptance there will be of it. Stigma is fueled by fear, and that fear came from those times before effective treatments were discovered, which was before 1996. But if you're not living in the world of HIV, you don't know about the treatments. Like for the majority of people out there on the street, they still think about HIV being AIDS, which is not the same thing. Mm-hmm. So HIV is a virus, and AIDS is all the different illnesses that you get when you don't have a strong immune system, when the virus has basically destroyed and eaten away your immune system. The treatments you take control that virus and just stop it and keep it in check, like put it in a little hidden away little reservoir in your body where it can't get out, like in your bone marrow or something like that. You can't, you're not infectious. You can't infect anyone when you've got undetectable viral load, and the treatments do that. But that wasn't how it was for me. Like when I was diagnosed in 1995, it was a death sentence. Like even the doctor said, you probably got about 5 years. That's like 5 years before my immune system was destroyed, and I would get sick and get all these what they call AIDS-defining illnesses like pneumonia, cancers, that kind of thing. And so like it's devastating. Like at that time I was a 30-year-old woman. There'd be no, getting married, no children, no white picket fence or whatever you'd like to call it. No life. Like that would be it. Life finished. And like two things happened at that point. One was I didn't want to die and not have anything to show for my life. And I had just completed this journey across Africa, this amazing adventure, physically and mentally, spiritually. I had this awakening, and to me, life looked different and full of promise, and that you could make anything happen for you. You just had to believe in it, and then something would come along. Some energy would be attracted to that belief and that passion for your idea to make it happen. I believe that, and I still believe that today without a doubt. And I wanted to share that with the world, and I wanted to share my story, to share that underlying kind of theme, and to share all the experiences I had, which would reinforce that belief. And I had to do that before I died. So I went away and I wrote my book, quickly wrote it out, and then tried to get a publisher. And I had an editorial meeting with Little Brown in London. They're a pretty international big publisher. And I'm in there and I'm saying, I had no idea about publishing. Here's the manuscript. You publish it, but I'm off on another adventure for a year. Not contactable. You won't find me anywhere. I'm in the middle of nowhere. And they're like, no way, we can't do this. So I just, because I didn't get the publishing contract, off I went traveling. And I did that journey because I thought, well, if I'm going to die, I might as well, I'm not going to go home and just wait to die. There was at that time, there was no hope. It was, that you only had one thing to look forward to. And I also didn't want to worry my parents. It would destroy them, particularly my mother. So I wasn't going to involve them in this. And I also believed that I would be saved. If I went on the road, something would come along to save me, as it had in Africa. I was always saved in Africa. Something was protecting me. So that was the other reason I went traveling again. I went on the road. It was like sit around and wait to die and just be miserable, or go on the road, and maybe on the road there'll be some hope, something would happen. Also, I wasn't ill at the time. I was healthy. There was no sign of me feeling unwell. When people are infected with HIV, some never get sick. Some people go 5 years before they get sick. Some people go 10 years. So there was also that hope. I was thinking, well, maybe I'm one of those people. And so that's why I went travelling. And the problem also was, when I was travelling, is when you've been given a death sentence, constantly in the back of your mind, or in your front of your mind, in the back of your mind, probably completely filling your mind, is I'm going to die. And this is repeated. It's on this loop. I'm going to die. And it is constant, and it is like just relentless, day after day after day. But what happened is, when I was traveling, it was still there, but it wasn't as loud, because when you are traveling, you are living in the now, and you have all this stuff to think about, and the events and the adventure that you're on, and the people that you're interacting with, that is happening right now. So this loud kind of I'm going to die loop just becomes in the back of your mind, and you kind of tune it out. And that's sort of, again, the other thing that saved me by being on the road was it gave me some freedom from what I thought was going to happen to me. Because about when I was traveling, at about that same time, the new generation of HIV medications had been discovered, and the medical world they just thought, oh, this is another HIV medication that will buy people a bit more time, like AZT. They didn't know then how effective these treatments were. It was only like months after, when people were like rising from their deathbeds, and one moment they're about to die, next minute they're functioning, healthy, happy people. It took a while for that to sink in the medical world. But by that time, I was on the road riding my motorcycle through Central Asia. No access to internet. And I had no idea this was going on. As far as I was concerned, it was still the end of days for me. And it wasn't until I got back to Australia and I was very, very sick, and I went to hospital, that they put me on the treatments, and were very concerned I wouldn't make it. But 10 days later, I was out of hospital and up and going. So I was out of hospital in December, and by March I was studying journalism full time at university.
And throughout this entire journey, even from the moment that you got the idea to motorbike across Africa, what is it that you think you've learned about life and death and the importance of being present in your own life?
Not to worry. I think we put too much energy into worrying about something that might happen or might not happen in the future. So very much like live in the now, and just have a bit of faith that things will work out. It takes a lot of energy to worry. So why not focus that energy into the moment, into what you're actually doing right now, and let the future, let tomorrow just unfold as it should. I think that that helps me a lot, and I learnt that from the very beginning of my travels in Africa. I made a conscious choice to not to worry, to trust, and not to be fearful. And when you do that every day, it becomes a habit. And then when it's a habit, it's a way of life. And that, I think, applies to anything we do. If you do something enough, if you do it every day and you do it enough, you'll get really good at it. When I was in London and decided I wanted to become a motorcycle courier. Had no idea how dangerous this occupation was, but that's what I had in my head, because I wanted the journey to continue with me and the motorcycle together. And some British guys in Africa and also another guy in Australia I'd met said, when you get to London, do motorcycle couriering, you can make a lot of money out of it, and it's really good fun. So off I went, and so many times I could have died, but I did that for a year, and I got really, really good at riding a motorcycle through traffic. And it's one of the things I absolutely love doing, riding and safely riding, not being a mad person like you see sometimes on the road. They ride too fast, but safely and judging the traffic, and it becomes you get into this sort of flow of it. And I got really good at it, and I only got really good at it because I did it every day. And I think anything you want to do, you just have to do it. You have to do it every day. Whatever it happens to be, sport, you just have to practice it. Some people might want to be good at something and they think, I'd love to be good at playing football, but you have to play football every day. You have to, practice with the ball. You've got to, and then you get good at it, and you do it every day, and eventually you're going to be really good at it. For sure, that is definitely going to happen. So, yeah. Did I answer the question?
Yeah, absolutely. That's so incredibly valuable, that lesson. And I would love to ask you, what advice would you give people that are listening right now that may have sort of that little adventure or big adventure in their mind that's just sort of been sitting there for a while now, but they're a little hesitant or a little fearful of sort of making that into fruition? What's a little nudge that you could give them?
I think plan, put the planning into process, because that planning will make you feel confident about what you're going to do. If you could just decide, you could say you're going to ride a motorcycle to Africa, for example.
That would be a crazy idea.
You could, after this, you could today, right? If you're in that part of your life where you don't have any responsibilities, you could go out, get on your motorcycle, go to a shop, buy a motorcycle, pack up a bit of gear, ride to Fremantle, or if you're going to go by cargo ship as I did, find a cargo ship, put your bike on there. I'm not sure if cargo ships are still doing that. I think they still are. And go to Africa with no planning at all. You will learn on the way. You will just pick things up on the way. And you don't need a lot of gear. You really don't. But often when you plan to do your journey or whatever it happens to be, it makes you feel better. You feel more confident. You feel like I'm in control. And I think that's really important for whatever you do. So you can, what's going to go wrong, I've got my travel insurance. I've got I've had my dental checkup. That's one thing I did in Perth. I went to a dentist, and I said, look, I'm going to be in Africa for a year, maybe 2 years. Check my teeth out, whatever needs filling, fill it. So I didn't want to be in Africa and have to go to a dentist, that kind of thing. I had all the vaccinations, so I didn't, for cholera, typhoid, yellow fever, had your malaria medications. So, yeah, there's a bit of planning involved, and that because you have to, you want to be safe as well. You don't want to be completely unsafe. But a lot of that sort of stuff you could say, do on the way, like any of the big cities in Africa would be able to help you out with that sort of stuff. There would be a dentist in Nairobi for sure. That would, that would treat your teeth. So, but yeah, I just think a little bit of planning in it, and then, make sure don't come up with excuses of why not. Maybe talk about why I should do this. What are the advantages? What is it going to be like? Maybe watch a few YouTube videos, because you can do that now, about other people who have done a similar journey to you, and it'll give you the confidence that, oh, gee, this person did that, and it doesn't look that dangerous. It doesn't look, that scary, and they're doing it, so I can do it. And eventually what will happen is you'll run out of excuses as to why not doing it. All of that will be left is why you should do it. Yeah.
Well, thank you for this beautiful conversation, Heather. And on a final note, I would love to ask you, what does it mean to you to be human?
That, we started the conversation about Ubuntu. And I think that's a really great word because I love that word so much. And because I am because we are. And I think what it means to be human to me is to be connected with other people and to help other people. And, that way we all make the world a better place together and we evolve together. And that's what we've been doing since we, came down from the trees is evolving, and we've been evolving together. And, being human to me means Ubuntu.